Hello, thank you for listening to the Finance Leadership Podcast. It's your monthly focus on the latest information and news about the Finance Leadership Programme. It's produced by AICPA and CIMA, together as the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. You can find out more at aicpa.org and cimaglobal.com. As usual, you are listening to myself, Kevin Gormley, and today I am joined by Lyndsay Falconer. We asked Lyndsay onto the podcast as she was one of the early adopters in the UK to make the jump to the Finance Leadership Programme when we launched it last September. So welcome, Lyndsay. Would you just like maybe to introduce yourself and say a little bit about your work experience and what you do?
Yeah, good morning, Kevin. So my name's Lyndsay Falconer. I was born in Glasgow in Scotland, and I currently live in a small town called Arbroath, still in Scotland. I'm currently the FP&A manager for a company called AICPA over in Dundee. Previous to that, I have worked in various manufacturing industries such as Sappi and Dover Fueling Solutions. And then before that, I was in the oil and gas with Subsea 7 and Oil Technics Limited. So very, very varied background, different industries as well, which has really been amazing. And I'm quite fortunate where I live that I'm an hour in each direction from each of these hubs.
Yeah, a fairly frequent conversation with most people on the East Coast that they've worked with the oil and gas industry at some point. So if you could just give us a little bit of a background in terms of your CIMA journey, why you chose this qualification, and obviously your study up to the point of where you moved into the Finance Leadership Programme.
Yeah, so actually I've been studying CIMA for quite a long time. My daughter was born in 2011 and I returned to work 2012. And I decided that I kind of had to grow up a little bit and kind of focus on my career to make sure that, she was well looked after. I had moved to Subsea 7 at that point, and qualifications were kind of drilled into you in the oil and gas industry. You could only kind of go up the ranks if you had these qualifications. So I knew that I had to have something. And in my head, there's a big difference between financial accounting and management accounting. And I personally didn't really want to go down the financial accounting route, which was more kind of backwards looking, where we are currently and what we have done. I wanted to go more into the kind of forward looking strategic thinking side. And that's what made me kind of choose the CIMA route. And I actually started back when it was papers that were 3 hours long for each objective test. And, you could sit both the operational and management level at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
I think my first papers were E1 and E2, like 3 days apart.
Oh, yes.
So it was quite a long time ago.
That's the stuff of nightmares for some people.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we experience hand cramp in the same way anymore.
No.
So that was where I decided to go through the CIMA route. And again, being up in Aberdeen at the oil and gas, Robert Gordon used to have a degree that you could study alongside doing CIMA. So I started off on that. But as I progressed through my career, I kind of dropped the university route and just stuck with CIMA. And I then went from that route into self-study route. And I think I've used all the providers available, to be honest. I've definitely used Kaplan, and more frequently, I've used HTFT. And then obviously in the latter years, I've used the FLP when it became available in the UK.
You subscribed last September when we launched it. So I know you and a few other students were more than keen, shall we say, to make the move to this pathway. So what was your main driver or reason for that?
Honestly, in the beginning, I didn't even know FLP was a thing. It was actually in one of the kind of Facebook Messenger groups that people started talking about this platform. And I'm like, what is this? What are you all talking about? And I kind of did a bit of research, and the way that it was kind of sold as it is smaller, kind of bite-sized chunks of learning, digital platform, so it could kind of come anywhere with you. And that for me was the biggest thing. Obviously, I'm quite further along in my career than some people, and my work-life balance is all over the shop. So I needed something that could fit in better with my lifestyle. And watching some of I think it was the Irish launch that I watched, where they actually did a demonstration of the platform. And to me, that just sold it for me, that I knew then instantly that I needed to sign up for this because it was going to make my life so much easier. It's easier for me to find 30 minutes to an hour in my schedule than it was trying to find a block of 3 or 4 hours to really study. The dashboard, I think, was the big thing for most people. And certainly when I was using the platform, that was really motivational for me. So obviously the way that the dashboard works, as soon as you log in, you get given this dashboard that tells you your current level that you're studying for, how many topics you still got to go, and if you were to continue at that pace, when you would be ready to sit the case study exam. So for a lot of us, that really helped because we came in September, most of us just with one objective test to go for the November case study exam. So we knew that we had to go in hard and get that done in order to sit the November case study. So yeah, I think there was a group of about 27 of us that originally signed up, all from the UK. And that group chat is still ongoing, even though we're all finished now.
Made some friends for life?
I think so. I hope so. Yeah, we've been through the pains together.
And you were at management level, so you had one module to complete for your case study in November?
Yeah, so because it was launched in the September, but we had all actually been studying for the paper, but we all decided actually we just wouldn't sit the paper and we would do it on the FLP platform. And then obviously tackled the November case study. And then I think there was 3 people out of our group that did February strategic case study, and then the rest of us tackled it in May. But to have those people kind of going through the same experience as you at the same time was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's quite a quick turnaround as well. I know you had studied before the release of FLP, but even to complete the learning and then move into the case study is quite a good time frame as well. So you were quite aggressive in your time frame and successful.
Yeah, you could definitely be a lot quicker if you wanted to, if you had that capacity to take that time on. But a lot of us are in that point of our careers where there's just not enough time in the day. So trying to really push for it, I think if you were maybe at the start of your career, then definitely you would be able to sail through it. The case studies, obviously, they're not easy. They're not designed to be easy. You do need to put a lot of effort into them. And that was the good thing about having those kind of group chats. It got people talking. And obviously, there's loads of articles that are on CIMA Global as well that, although they're not linked directly to the FLP, you do get like a timeline that says, you could read this article or this newspaper, which was quite good as well.
And obviously, you were on the Skills Plus subscription, so you were like self-learner with no live classes part of your subscription, but obviously having that cohort or that class of peers working together and conversing was definitely advantageous and helpful.
Yeah, to be honest, that was just done selfishly. So I knew that I wanted to sit the case study in November. I had promised my boss when I started that I would be sitting that case study in November, and the live courses wouldn't have actually got me to be able to sit that at that point because it had just been launched. So I went with that route, knowing that I could sit that case study. I have had some feedback from other students that have said, the lectures are really good, and which is great. Just I never really got that chance.
Yeah, you had a time frame and you were sticking to it no matter what. So
exactly, yeah.
It's a good thing to do because
I think I'd had enough by that point.
It's so easy to kick the can down the road again and again and again, and things will get in the way.
Exactly, I made a promise to myself.
That was good. That was a good mindset to have, particularly when you're doing professional exams. How did you find the learning experiences, so completion of this topics, the skill sets, the competencies? How did that all work for you?
For me, it was really good. So I did quite a lot, and I only get a 30-minute lunch break, just the way that I work. And it was quite good just to be at my computer, log in, and I could read a little bit in that 30 minutes. And then when I got home at night, I logged back on and it would start from where I had just finished, or I could get to the end of a topic and then go home and do, the little questions that are at the end. So there was always like a really good stopping point, maybe every 10, 15 minutes. So I kind of felt that for me, it just really worked. As I said before, I liked the fact that I didn't need to spend 3 or 4 hours studying. I could if I wanted to. Obviously, I did that at the weekends, but during the week, if you're working full time, especially as an accountant, you've got periods like budgeting and year end, and there's just no way on earth that you're going to be mentally prepared to sit and study. So for me, that was the biggest thing. And from a work point of view, I was able to show my boss where I was progressing each time I had a one-to-one with him. So it actually allowed for him to say, do you need any support? Are you at a topic that, I'm quite comfortable with? Or I remember once we actually had a laugh because it was something about tax and he hated tax just as much as I did. So there's all that comes from it. It's not just about your studying, it's actually about everything else that goes around it. Certainly you don't really have to sacrifice as much family time if you've got young children. It's certainly something that you can work around when they're in their bed.
I've had a pound for every time I've heard the words, I'm a CIMA student or a member and I don't like tax, I'd be a millionaire. So obviously one part of your learning is building up to the case study, completing the business simulation assignments. Did you find those useful?
Yeah, they were. For me, that was the biggest part. I think you can kind of get through the topics because you've just read it. But when you get to the end of a business simulation, you have to remember what you've read maybe a week ago or however quick you're going through them. So it did kind of prepare you. And the actual case study course itself, I really like the core activity videos. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they basically do like not a lecture, but somebody sitting there walking through the core activities from each of the ICANN statements. And that's a really good way to focus your revision because they're kind of giving you, okay, this is what's going to be in the exams. All of these can be tested. So make sure you know all of these. You're not going to definitely get it, but you might. Because it's very difficult when there's 3 papers that have each got their own core activities. And then you go into a case study that there's so much that can be asked.
Of course. Yeah. I don't know, it's Adrian Sims does the core.
That's it, yes. Yeah.
He's very good. And the purpose of the core activities is obviously to give students the key areas of focus for the level that have arisen most often in the past for the case study. So chances are you'll get some of those questions or associated questions around that topic. So that's the reason they're there, is to get the student refreshed again with something they may have learned earlier in their cycle of completing the level. Now, obviously, you've been through all the pain and suffering and you've come out the other end, and now you've passed your practical experience requirements and you now have your CGMA. So have you felt any different?
I still can't believe that I actually passed, to be honest.
Yes.
So I came out of the exam and I just burst into tears. I was adamant it was the worst paper I'd ever sat. And the whole way through, I was like, I'm going to have to resit. And I was preparing myself to resit. And then obviously I passed. And I don't think it's actually quite sunk in even now. But for me personally, I have a really supportive manager. And we had already had these discussions about pathways for my career. And we'd kind of started developing them before I even passed. So now that we've passed, we can continue those discussions properly. But honestly, I think the biggest thing for me is that it just feels like a weight's been lifted. I did my PER after my case study. So even after I had my result, I was still going through the motions of getting the PER approved and submitted and all that kind of stuff. So that was still quite stressful. So if anybody's listening, definitely get your PER done first. Then when you pass that, it's done and it's over. But I just feel like, yeah, you no longer have to spend most of your night glued to your laptop, after being in an office all day, glued to a computer kind of thing. So getting that back has definitely made a huge difference, and hopefully I can use my time more constructively.
It's one of the things that everyone would agree on, is that you have so much free time. Then it's, what am I going to study now, or what am I, a new hobby, or what will I do with all this time? I suppose for the first year you should just relax and enjoy it. That's really the advice that most people give.
I think the thing was that because I actually took really bad, and I spoke to another friend who was feeling the same way, that once you've passed and you're no longer studying, you kind of feel like you don't know what to do with yourself. So there's definitely a whole cohort of students who are like, yes, I'm done, I can go and get my life back. But then there was a lot of us who were just kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Like, I've got free time. What do I do? And it's really surreal, especially if you've been studying for so long.
Yeah, because it forms habits, and the habits are hard to break. It's a good problem to have, Lyndsay. I'm sure you'll agree now. Obviously, FLP's grown exponentially in the UK since its launch, and it continues to grow at a fast rate. We're even ourselves surprised at its success. But we have loads of students still, and I guess that obviously students choose whatever pathway is best for their certain requirements. But anyone considering FLP, what would your advice be, or what would you say?
I think you're right. Obviously, they have to choose the pathway that suits them. So I think if you're someone that doesn't have huge pockets of time, then definitely the FLP is the way to go. My only thing is it is very easy just to click through all of the topics, whereas you really have to understand them, because when you get to the case study, if you don't understand it, you're not going to have success in the case study. So remember that as you're going through each of these topics, the whole idea is that you will attempt a case study, and the case study is the same no matter which route you take.
Yes. Fair point.
So you have to be prepared to face that case study. And if you've never faced a case study, especially if you're new to CIMA itself, these are very difficult. They're not designed to be easy, or else everybody would be a chartered accountant. But they're designed to get you thinking like you will one day in your organisation. So you have to kind of take a step back and not answer it from a student point of view, but actually, if you were in that position, what would you advise somebody and what would you advise your manager?
That's really good advice.
But certainly that's the way that I would go, is definitely target the case study and make sure that you are prepared. Take your notes as you go through. Everybody takes notes differently, but however you do that, take your notes, make sure you understand the topic. If you can, try past paper questions for like F2 and P2 and all of those. You can still get the textbooks if you wish. I think for the case study, there is a familiarisation workbook. I didn't realise that until the last day before my exam, but there is past paper questions in there.
Right.
So use them. They will help.
No, that's good advice. And I guess that, there are some students that think, oh, FLP is easier, I'll go that way. I mean, it's not, because you can drift through and pass assessments and still not learn anything. So it's really important you absorb the information and work it through your own head, take notes, as you say. And obviously, the case study is the ultimate determinant of competence at each of the 3 levels. So you're not going to pass the case study if you sort of drift through the learning. So it is important.
No, exactly. And I know somebody who's gotten a top 10 from the first cohort in November. So it's definitely doable. It's not that it's never going to happen for you. It just takes time, and you just have to remember that you're studying. It's not just an online course that you might get at work where you just have to show that you've done it. You really have to understand it.
Well, that's great. No, I appreciate you taking the time to give us your thoughts as one of the early adopters in the UK, Lyndsay. So I appreciate you joining today.
No, you're very welcome.
So that's a good place for us to end our conversation. There's plenty more to explore on this topic. So have a look at the show notes. They're all available in the episode's info icon in the podcast app or on your smartphone. For more information on the Finance Leadership Programme, you can go to enroll.cgma.org or AICPA-CIMA.com. So thanks again to Lyndsay, and of course thanks for everyone listening today. I know if you know of a friend or a colleague who could use this information, feel free to share it with your networks to see all the sharing buttons on the podcast app. That's it for now. We'll have another episode next month in November. Until next time, goodbye.
This content is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the AICPA, the Association, or CIMA. It is provided with the understanding that they are not engaged in offering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The AICPA, the Association, and CIMA make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to, and assume no responsibility for, the content or application of the material contained herein, and especially disclaim all liability for any damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.